All right, today we're going to use a combination of the skills we've been working on this week to create an illustration of the human eye. This will serve as practice for the illustration project that we start next week, where you'll need the exterior of the eye, like a portrait version of an eye, along with an eye illustration. And we're going to practice the hard part, the portrait part of the eye first. So what this will do, we'll combine yesterday's watercolor shading with the skin tone, and the skin tone with a little portrait practice. So what we're going to do is I have posted in our Google Classroom a document with human eye photograph chunks. And so these end up about the right size just on the screen in the doc. And so I'm just going to pull the Google Doc up here on my screen, and I can go ahead and scroll through these and find the illustration that I most would like to use. It is 100% up to me which one I choose to do. I recommend actually that you do 2 of them, because one, more practice is always better, but also there is a back and forth. Watercolor has to dry while you're working on it, and so if you start one, you can switch to a different one while it dries. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use some of my tracing paper, and you can see this is one that I've used 2 other times for other things, but I'm going to be able to squeeze this eye in here. So this is me effectively using my supplies. If I want, I can hit this with just a little bit of tape right here to my screen so that it doesn't slide all over the place. And I am going to replicate this illustration. Now, I will need where things get lighter, where things get darker. This image in the slideshow kind of replicates the sort of thing we're going to be doing next week for our project. So you'll notice I'm not going to draw like the eyelashes, but I'm going to kind of indicate where they go. I am going to draw where there are shadows and where things kind of change. And I'm going to need to do this for 2 different illustrations. So I'm going to go ahead and trace 2 right now, but for, and then we're going to transfer them. So I have my tracing now, and I'm going to go ahead. This is, again, the mixed media paper, and I am going to just reuse this tape that's here. I'm going to just kind of tape that quick to my paper, and I'm going to sneak my transfer sheet underneath, and I am just going to transfer what I drew off the computer screen. Your illustration is guided by this drawing, and so the better this drawing is, the better chances you have of making a really great like painting. This transfer paper is pressure sensitive too, so if I press harder, I'm gonna get a darker line. If I press lighter, I'm gonna get a lighter line. And so I wanna think about that as I'm putting in some of the details, that like hard details, I wanna press a little harder. Places like this where the shadow changes, I want those to be a little lighter. Before I untape this, I'm gonna go ahead and just double check that yes, indeed, I do have everything there. What I'm gonna do now is I am still looking at that image on the screen. I'm never gonna shut that off, not the whole time that I paint. And I'm also looking at all of my information here that I've painted the last couple of days to kind of inform this work. So thing one is I'm going to look at the combinations of skin color, and I can see right away when I'm looking at my skin color tones that I've made and looking at the illustration at the same time that I am going to be using this, the red and green combination that leans more red because she's got a lot of these pink tones, but that I'm also going to need to use this yellow and purple combination to mimic her hair and eyebrow. So there isn't anything that says you can't use more than one of these combinations or augment while you're painting. So that's what I'm kind of keeping in mind as I begin to paint. Watercolor, the more water I use, the lighter my color will be. All right, so I'm going to say that again. The more water I use, the lighter my color will be. So that is important for me to think about as I am mixing up this skin tone for my illustration, because I'm going to, in this example, she has incredibly light skin. And so in order to achieve that, I am going to have a lot of water in my color. So that's kind of important for me to remember as I'm kind of creating the color that I'm going to use for her skin. So down here, I'm going to start someplace where it's definitely darker. So this is a shadow. So just like yesterday when we were working with the spheres, I'm going to start where it's shadowed and work my way out from there. The reason for this is that gives me the chance to blend this color out. So I have my couple of like color spotches there, and now what I did was clean my paintbrush out. I am squeezing it dry, and I'm just going to tease this color out and into my sheet of paper. So cleaned my paintbrush off again. So you can see with all of the water, I have altered this skin tone to be actually a little lighter than I think the finished painting will be in some cases. But it's always easier. I have a harder time making things lighter than making things darker. And so it is always good for you to start a little lighter than you think you're gonna need and to darken from there. Like I said, it's not really possible always to lighten things completely back up. So I am trying to leave that shadow spot there because there's definitely shadow that's here. But again, I also have to know and remember that watercolor work happens in layers. It happens in passes. So it's not going to happen for me all at once right now. I'm going to have to let this dry before I move on and continue to add some of the other details and shadows. So I see right here that her eyelid is lighter on this side, and so I just cleaned and dried my paintbrush. If I need a little bit more than that, you can see I can pull that off with some paper towel. Again, super clean, dry paintbrush, and it's like almost like a little bit of an eraser. She's got a highlight spot here too. Now I'm gonna be at the point where this is in the spot where it's going to need to dry. I also see that this is too hard of a line, so clean my paintbrush off. Push that around a little bit. I could probably start trying to tackle her hair somewhat. Oh, that's a weird color. Let's see, darker down here. So again, I'm pushing color in. I'm gonna pull that color around, making sure to think about where it's lighter and darker, but also knowing that I'm going to have to continue this painting. Like, this isn't going to be done in one section or one video lesson even. I will not be able to successfully do this all in one shot. So I'm going ahead, I added some of the color of her hair into her eyebrow, but then noticed too that it actually kind of more closely matches some of the shadows. And I'm gonna be in a spot now where I do simply have to let this dry before I can continue anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and soften those shadows that I just put in. Again, clean your paintbrush off, squeeze it dry. Soften everything up so that you don't have these hard lines, but instead we have a gradual shift from light to dark. I'm gonna leave some of these hard lines here, eyebrow, right? But it does go all the way, extend into her hair. And I'm gonna be at the spot where I cannot finish this until it dries, which is why you have until the end of class tomorrow to finish this.